Hello, beautiful humans. Kenny Palantano here, coming to you from at Real Life is an RPG on all the platforms. Wanted to talk to you a bit today about why I've written this book, am writing this book still, why this vision and all the bits and pieces that go along with it have come through as such an important thing for me. So, in my own life, geekdom was a big part of growing up. From reading my dad's old D&D books long before I ever sat down to play D&D, just reading through the source books, to diving in and reading, fantasy and sci-fi books, getting into video games, getting into obviously the movies and shows around that stuff too, because that started to be bigger and better as CGI became a thing. But I also suffered from a lot of depression. I dealt with a lot of addiction. I was trying to fit into a society and various roles in society that were not for me and not a good fit, and that I don't think are healthy for anybody generally. And so there was a lot of time there where, I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to be playing this game. And as I started to come out of that and started reprogramming my brain and changing my diet, changing my intake of what I ate and drank, but also changing my intake of what I would listen to, what I would watch, what I would read, I started to, feel better and have a better and better life, a happier and happier life, be able to show up for other people more, be excited to be of service, be able to sleep well every night, be able to have energy without, needing any caffeine or anything, have no trouble digesting because I'm not eating things that my body can't process, eating things that are toxic for me. And so I went through, years of figuring out how to live in the best way for me, like what works best for my body and my experience of the world, for my brain, my particular, wiring. So as I began diving into this whole realm of self-help and neurolinguistic programming and stoicism and spirituality and philosophy and economics and history, much deeper than the not very honest and quite limited version that they teach us in school. As I started diving into all this, there was so many alignments that were coming to me, so many metaphors, so many parables, so many places where I would learn a new thing being laid out as just, a teaching in this world or someone's experience, and it would have this powerful flash to some book that I read or some comic book story or some moment in some game that I played or some mechanic in some game, like, oh, that's exactly how this works. And I started to realize that there were a lot of these, and I started to reflect back on a lot of the people that I had read, Michael Moorcock, Robert Heinlein, Ursula Le Guin, Ian Banks, these folks who, Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis, these, people who were thinkers, and many of whom were, anarchists, were libertarians, were voluntarists. They were very against sort of the controlling nature of modern society, modern meaning the past couple thousand years of this very hierarchical structure. And anyway, this book started from just those thoughts coming through, and there was a point where I just knew I was already talking to people about it. I would bring it up, and point it out with geek friends and stuff. But I wanted to bring it through more. I wanted it to be a real thing. And so after it had been maybe 3-4 years of just sort of existing in my brain and sometimes being talked about, and then in 2016 I started publishing some blogs that were pieces of this, and I literally just called it, Real Life. I think I called it Real Life, the role-playing game, which I changed quickly because the first time I printed anything, people all thought it was a game that I was trying to make rather than a book about life. And so that's when it started, and it's crazy to see how much geekdom and fandom has changed in the time since I started working on this project, since it started coming through. When I started Real Life as an RPG, the Iron Man movie had come out, and I think the original Avengers movie was about to come out. Is kind of when this was all happening for me. That's about the same time, So Game of Thrones was new in terms of the show. I think Battlestar Galactica was coming back. It was a different age. You look at the size of things like World of Warcraft and stuff 20 years ago, where they're breaking records, hitting a few million players, and you look at the size of things like League of Legends now with hundreds of millions of players every month, and you look at the top grossing movies of the last couple decades, so many of them being comic book movies or hard sci-fi movies, so many of the top shows being fantasy. It's really been this shift, and geekdom has become mainstream. Geekdom has shifted into the mainstream in a lot of ways. And gaming, card games, board games, video games are all more mainstream than ever as well. And so it's like, while all the ideas for the book and all the pieces that were needed were coming through to me over time as I was having more experiences and being introduced to new ideas and having my own journey, at the same time, the world was becoming geekier and geekier and geekier. And so the viability of this book as a resource for people has expanded. The possible niche of people who this message speaks to has grown and grown and grown exponentially over the past 20-25 years. And I really feel like this is like my life purpose. Like, this is my whole life was leading to this, like growing up the way that I did, going into the military briefly, going into the corporate world briefly, going to college, going to community college, and then going to university briefly, going to, getting married, getting separated, getting all this by the time I was, 21. And then continuing on and into drug addiction, into drug dealing, into various different fields of work, into, once I then started, my own awakening process and getting healthy and getting clean and living in a good way, then opening the door into all of that and allowing all this huge expansion into, cooking for people and being part of massive events all around the world and organizing and activism and music and having a whole album that I put together for a purpose and helping get somebody out of prison who is on a double life sentence, and being involved in so many cool things and just helping guide people, helping reflect for people, helping share my stories so people can see that it's possible and that they can change, that you don't have to be rich to get anywhere. You don't have to come from, like the nuclear family to get to wherever. You don't have to have gone to good schools. You don't have to have gone to university and gotten a degree. You don't have to have a bunch of money and a good credit score to create massive change in the world. You don't have to do it through, non-NGOs and big organizations. You can do it just as a person. There's so many pieces of my journey that it's just, I want to share that, and to share like how not easy, because it was years of work and reprogramming and changing the way I was thinking and the way I was behaving and making different choices along the way, but how possible it is to go from living a life that you don't like at all, drugs and alcohol, numbing out whenever I wasn't, basically it's like I was bored and then hating life, or I was numbed out or distracted in some way, and so I was always trying to be there, and going from that to total freedom. And now I travel the world when I want to, and I just hang out in places when I want to, and I have no requirements of me except to show up and be who I am. And money comes in little plays there's so many different little side hustles or things, pieces of content you can put out that can earn forever, affiliate codes so that you can promote things that you actually use and enjoy and get paid when people use them or buy them themselves. I mean, there's so many ways that, and it doesn't mean that everybody has to live this life that I live either. Some people would much prefer to have a house where they live at all the times and a car where they have, and like that level of consistency and I would say as long as you're still growing and leveling up and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone a lot in other ways, that's cool. The point of the game, you play the game by playing the game, and taking on the role of an NPC, which we've talked about before, where a lot of people will end up in these roles of just doing the same thing for decades at a time, day in, day out, and not really growing from it, and not really leveling up from it, and not really being excited by it. Like, that's no good for you or for anybody else, really. And, well, it's good for a very small fraction of society who tends to accumulate all the profits from all of the people who are doing that. It's a parasitic system where the people go in and give up all their time and their energy to make these products, sell these products, blah, 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 blah. And then the folks who are getting most of the profit don't have any connection to them really, and aren't. Yeah. Anyway, don't need to go into all that. The point of the book is that I feel like it's the point of my life. And I'm so happy that the world has shifted as I've been shifting and learning and making all these connections. The world has shifted to where now at least a good portion of what's in there will speak to kind of everybody. And just like gamification being used so broadly, and like point systems and reward systems and loyalty programs and stuff. Everybody's used to these things. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I kind of doubt that anybody's made it this far in a video at this point without any flashing colors or anything, but maybe you like the nature vibes, you like the birds that have been hopping around. I'm certainly having a great time out here, and I hope you are as well. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon. Blessings.